This meeting is being recorded.
So, Austin, one of the things I was talking to Josh about this past week was I really wanted to do, and I thought of it before Pod Save America, put it out there, but I wanted to kind of go ahead and do an early 2028 presidential election prediction. Um,
Well, that's
and who you think is going to be candidates? Who do you think maybe in the next 4 years is going to be rising through the ranks to potentially be a candidate in 2028? So let me kind of throw it to you and just kind of be like, okay, and let's first do a huge discussion on Republicans, and then we'll go into Democrats. But who do you give me some top contenders that you think right off the bat that are going to run in 2028 for the Republican side?
as long as there's not like another Mike Pence deal, easily JD Vance. And I
Hmm.
don't. I mean, if it's as long with that caveat of like not another Mike Pence kind of situation, I don't really think there'll be anybody else because he's so obviously the successor at this point. It's not.
Yeah, I agree
I,
with
I just really. I mean, like obviously you could say people like DeSantis or whatever, but it's like as long as there's nothing too crazy out there happens, I just can't see anybody else because it's
that.
in this day and age, it's pretty normal for the sitting vice president to be the next up. That's kind of just become the thing anymore.
Yeah, and Austin, like you said too, I do think as long as there's not a Mike Pence thing, I do think if he's like if he does what he's like going to do, and there's not that issue. I mean, if Trump backs him, nobody's going to jump in that race.
Yeah,
But do you think you don't think there's any sleepers?
I
Um,
just I just can't see anybody. I mean, like I said, there's obviously people. I mean, there's DeSantis, there's Glenn Youngkin in Virginia, there's the other governor that's really kind of up
Kemp?
there. Nah, well, he's running for Senate. I have no doubt he's not running for president. He seems like he's set on Senate at this point. But
Um,
there was
the one
another
in Texas?
no, not Abbott. There was somebody else. He's kind of like a youngin, but I can't think of his name. I saw him floated as like another possibility, but like it's like I said, I just can't see it as long as there's no. I mean, it's really hard to predict 4 years out. I mean,
Right.
but I would say probably Vance. I think is the safe choice at this point.
So what do you think, Josh? You got any sleepers that you think are going to kind of come in on the Republican side, or who could?
Man, I'm really with Austin here. I think, yeah, like I can sit here and toss out like the Youngkins or DeSantis's of the world, and like in a way, yeah, they are sleepers. Like if something goes wrong, but if nothing goes wrong, I don't think you'll see anybody try to compete against Vance if Trump is especially behind him.
So do you think it's interesting that basically everyone that you guys have mentioned are from the Southeast?
I think it's just a. I mean,
And I guess like why would a Western candidate, Midwest or Great Plains kind of candidate, why would they not win
it's not
or
that I
be
don't think they
viable?
can't win. I think it's just more of like the South is just so dominant now. It's really hard to escape the Southernization of politics. And I think the fact that so many of these candidates kind of are from this region, I mean, it kind of reflects that. I mean, we've really, I mean, as early as George Bush, people were talking about, or George Bush too, they were talking about like the Southernization of U.S. politics. And I think this is just the most clear cut example of it. I honestly think it's weirder that like the last few Democratic candidates haven't been Southerners. I think that's more interesting than because it's you would they're really pushing hard for they've taken Virginia, they're trying to get Georgia, they're trying to get North Carolina. The fact they don't do more, say Bill Clinton tops, we'll go with just as an example. I think that's more interesting. I think.
What do you think, Josh?
Um, I mean, I'll be honest. I don't think they could win right now. I mean, obviously, like Austin said, there is that southernization of it, and it is kind of we are in kind of a dominant region on things. But like, if you can find a candidate out there that you think has that would bring you through the ranks currently, then maybe. But like, I don't think I could name you one candidate other than maybe like no, I can't. I don't have anybody that I could think of out there.
Now, do you mean like on the Democratic side or the Republican side, like
So
non?
right now, I just want to do Republican.
Okay.
Um, and I guess here's the question. So what would have to change for there to be more candidates to come into, I guess, being on or vying for the nomination? Like, do you think like, okay, immigration goes bad, now you're gonna see these or deportation goes bad, you're now gonna see these Republicans in the Northeast or the South or different groups. Like, do you think what would have to change before you see significant groups of other people coming in? Or do you think Trump is just so dominant to where he could massively screw up on deportations and they're still going to run the same people that they'd run today?
I think like if they screw up enough, there wouldn't. So the example I like to think of is 1992 with the Democrats, because like the whole reason Bill Clinton kind of got through with that was a lot of the people, a lot of the candidates people expected didn't run because of the start of the primary season. Everybody thought George Bush was a shoe in to win. And you kind of saw that a little bit with 2008 on the Republican side, where it was just like it was so obviously going to be a Democratic year. A lot of people weren't throwing their hats in the ring just because they didn't want to be the one to lose. So I mean, like if he does screw up, I think it's more likely I think at that point it's just more likely to be Vance. I feel like the other potential candidates would kind of just be like, there's really no point in me risking it. So like just let him take the L for this cycle, and I'll have a better chance next time. I mean that was I think that's a big reason why 2016 was so loaded on the Republican side, and then 2020 was loaded on the Democratic side. Everybody just was kind of it's just people they look at their chances and they're not just so wrapped up in it that they can't do the math and be like, okay, is it really worth my reputation to lose just for the sake of running?
What do you
So-
think, Josh?
Like what do you mean?
Like, what actions would have to change before you see other Republicans get in that wouldn't get in today?
Well, there would need to be some champions of like their own policies, like in a way, like we kind of saw DeSantis do it, like when because he's kind of the initial push on ESAs. So you need to see someone that could come in and like do that, like they could come in and just like be like a
Trying to
killer.
build their own brand.
Yeah, like have their own brand, like be their own person. Because like at the end of the day, yes, like you are gonna have to get that, like the Trump Godfather, like ring kiss to do it. But like you've really got to like come out and like at least like have some balls enough to like be your own thing too.
So what about someone like Vivek? Do you think people like him are gonna? Do you think that's gonna be more prevalent in 2028 if, say, there is the chance for more people to get in, or do you think those people are gonna kind of be excluded a little bit and it's gonna be mostly politicians?
Austin, you want this one?
I would say after the past couple of weeks, Vivek has just completely destroyed his chances of getting rid of the Republican nomination. I mean,
Because of H1B.
that like I can't emphasize enough how big of a fight that's been. I mean, there's a reason Trump's getting pulled into this. There's a reason so many politicians, you even had Nikki Haley coming out and kind of. I mean, it's such a lightning rod issue for the Republicans. The fact he took that position just kind of. I know, like a candidate in his vein, like an outsider, I can't rule that out. But I mean, I think him personally, I think that was kind of his. He blew his shot. And I think he kind of knew it too, because there was some talk he might run for Vance's Senate seat.
Yep.
And then the fact he backed out of that, I think he knew his positions. But that was even before this whole thing blew up. So then add that on top of it, and I don't think him in particular has a chance. But now, like I said, somebody in that vein, that might be a different story.
What do you think, Josh?
Yeah, no, I'm kind of on the same page of it. It's just you really got to, like I said, you got to figure out how to champion these issues that are getting brought in. I kind of go back to what I was saying there a minute ago. You really just got to kind of build your own thing around it and like be the guy that like instead of just like harping the Trump stuff, do something that like stands up to him, and then Trump, give the shout out versus like just being like Trump.
Mm-hmm. What about Rubio? You think like someone like Rubio could come in?
Ooh, I don't know.
Because isn't that what he's kind of doing? Is Rubio for the most part has kind of got his own little brand. all the way from 2016. It's not super big, but he's kind of a little bit more independent of probably some of the other people that are out there. And then he's kind of sucking up to him and kind of helping him out. Obviously, he's Secretary of State, so maybe not the JD Vance where you're second in command, but you're basically third in command.
Right. But
So do you think someone like that could be more prevalent, especially if you do have some I don't want to say policy issues, but if you do kind of have some of these issues in the Trump administration where things kind of change the landscape and you see more people coming in, do you think someone like Marco Rubio could kind of slide in and kind of be like, hey, I'm here. I'm not Trump. I'm dealt with foreign policy, not domestic policy. And, I could be the inheritor of that. Josh.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Can you say that last part because you cut out? That's why I was.
Oh, so I'm just saying, like, essentially, is Marco Rubio positioned himself to where if things go to shit domestically, but externally it's fine, he could kind of come in and kind of be the backup or the replacement if JD Vance doesn't.
But I think it's one of those, like, it's easy to say that in the hypothetical. I feel like there's a lot of shit that would have to happen if you know what I'm saying.
Well, I'm thinking of like Hillary, right? Like, wasn't that kind of her thing? Was she's not here in the office, she's external, and so depending on what things look like on the ground, like in 2026, Biden versus Hillary, obviously Obama said we're going to go with Hillary instead of Biden. Do you think something like that could kind of happen, except with Marco Rubio? Especially maybe if they need the Hispanic vote. What do you think? What do you think, Austin?
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, that has been floated. That might be a reasoning to give him that spot. But I've seen. I think I mentioned it, several shows back. Like the reason they picked him for that spot, I think is kind of interesting in the sense that, like, I think it does signify more Latin America focus in terms of foreign policy. So I'm seeing other people start to pick up on that take now. Like I'm seeing that out in the wild, so to speak. So. It's very possible. I mean, if the situation calls for it, I mean,
yeah.
It would be a very Trumpian move to have Vance there, but then you've also got Rubio in case Vance gets out of line or vice versa. And then I guess it could, you could look at it from the perspective of like keep your enemy and your friends close, or however you want to phrase it in this case.
Yeah. So, I guess kind of. Last question, and I say this because you sometimes kind of hear about this, and I always kind of wonder what is the role that the Trump family is going to play in 2028. What do you think, Austin?
That'll be hard to say. Like he's undercut his son so much in a way that it's like I really can't see any of them trying for anything. But there was talk of like what's her face.
Laura.
Well, yeah. Like there have been talking like maybe she might, and then they kind of shot that down. So it's like,
oh, you're talking about for the Florida Senate?
Yeah. So it's like I don't know. Like it really does kind of seem like the way he's went about this, he's kind of. I don't want to say necessarily completely excluded him from it, but it is kind of like like the fact that none of them are making any sorts of movements on their own would kind of suggest to me that like. If they want to be laying the framework for their own careers, they need to be doing it like now. And the fact they're not, it does seem like this isn't like a dynasty play in a sense.
Yeah. What do you think, Josh? Oh, go ahead, Austin. Continue.
I mean, they'll definitely always have like a spot, at least for the next few years. Like they'll always be like speakers and stuff at conventions or whatnot. But like the fact they're not getting into elected office, I think, is very interesting at this point.
What do you think, Josh?
Kind of like how what kind of take you want me to like?
I guess do you think the Trump family is basically just going to kind of, I guess, be like what Austin's saying is just more of like a ceremonial kind of a thing, or do you think they're going to be more of on the fundraising side and just kind of just be funneling money into MAGA candidates? Do you think they're just going to kind of be like, hey, we're done, like, or they're going to run for office? Where do you think the Trump family is going to head to?
They're going to be the Republican Party.
But do you think they're going to assume any positions? Do you think they're going to run for anything? Do you think they're going to
are you saying like Trump Jr. or something like
Trump Jr., Eric, Laura, any of them?
Well, Baron Augustus is going to
Baron
be
Augustus.
could be a president in the future for sure. Um, that's funny. I mean, he's just a giant. I mean, but yeah, I think we'll see a Trump family member run. I don't know about for president, but I think we'll see him run. Maybe they can take over Florida. We'll
Well,
they're just kind of running amok out there. It's like you might as well.
so let's. I guess I'll throw my 2 cents in there. I think DeSantis is going to kind of be the front runner with Vance, and I think it's going to be okay. Which side's kind of like maybe what Austin's saying is it's like Vance is going to be the kind of more on the moderate side compared to DeSantis, who's going to be maybe more on the kind of farther right Tea Partier part. And then if things just kind of go to shit and they really need to pull someone out, they'll go to a Glenn Youngkin or a Marco Rubio.
Yeah,
They'll just kind of go to those guys. That's kind of what I think's going to happen.
That's a good call, though. That's a good take.
And it's not this, and
I
that's not to
expected a
say
hot take,
you're
yeah.
not going to see someone from Nebraska, who's a senator that we never really talk about,
Christy
kind of come
Nome.
in
Give me
and
Christy
get something
Nome.
going.
Let's
I
get
think
some
that's
votes, man.
possible.
Are you talking about Christy Nome, the governor of South
dude.
Dakota?
No, not Christy Nome. I guess I'm just thinking of like the
Yeah.
Iowa governor. Maybe she's gonna run and do something.
I mean, let's just hope she doesn't kill puppies again.
That's what I'm saying, dude. We'll just sacrifice some puppies. Give me Christy Nome. Dude, we could that'll be the inauguration. Instead of putting her hand on the Bible, she can sacrifice a puppy inaugurally.
She just pulls out
So
pulls out a pistol and domes a dog on live TV.
straight between the eyes. It's like so help me God. Boom.
this is yeah.
You guys
She shoots it, uses the blood to sign her name on the dotted line. I will defend the Constitution.
That's exactly
We're never getting monetized.
what.
Well, we're not getting monetized now anyway, dude. Dude, I'm having fucking. I think I told maybe.
Isn't this the stuff that gets you monetized?
Yeah, I'm hoping he gets me the clicks. But
Hey, listen. Hey, apparently I'm the guy to come for clicks because I just I'm Twitter famous now, bitches.
oh yeah.
What happened?
Dude, so I posted. By the way, I was hammered drunk. It was New Year's Eve, and I posted a take on college football, Austin, on Twitter. I was like, if anybody's watching this Penn State Boise State quarterfinal game and doesn't see that we have to fix the seeding issue, then you have to reevaluate. And then sports just the sports Instagram account and then the CFP playoff account, they reposted it on their Twitter and their Instagram, 1.9 million followers, and they're all just calling me. I had so many Boise State fans in my mentions getting pissed. I was just like, bring it. The Vol Twitter carried me, but it's okay.
That's funny.
Dude,
Okay,
Well, dude, I can't even put ads out. I do I'll do a $5 ad, and I can't even get it because we do shocking content and presidential election advertising.
How much would a decent ad be?
Dude, probably. I think they say over $200 is a good amount.
Your firstborn son.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much, dude. It's $200, and
I'll put $200 in it for you for
Well,
for
I've been putting money into it, and it hasn't been an issue. It's just one of those things where I really do start to kind of see kind of the bullshit that's there with the censorship stuff. Like I said, they said when we did the video on drones in New York and who could be behind that and everything like that. They said that was shocking content. And they thought it was me promoting ISIS or something like that, and I'm like, what the fuck are we talking about here? And then they said the presidential election advertising, and they said the reason why is because I put a picture of Joe Biden in a video. I think it was episode 7, where it was where we talked about Hunter Biden, and it was just a picture of Joe Biden and Hunter Biden, just them walking, and then because that picture is in there, I will forever get tagged and disapproved because of presidential election advertising. So I filled out the form that they said, hey, fill out this form and you won't have any issues. You'll be registered. Because they're worried about some taxes or shit. And I said, okay. So I filled it out. And I submit my driver's license. I do all this other kind of shit. I filled it out and they approved it. But every single time I put a video out there, they disapprove it because of election advertising or something like that. And I'm like, the election's over. Like, what the fuck are we dealing with here? You know? And it's just so stupid. But like when you see people who do this stuff, and get paid a lot of money, I can see why you'd be pissed.
Do you need
It's
to
like this is such bullshit. Like it's like nothing.
do we need to have like a 3 episodes where we're like blue hair, like wearing people on here, like
Yeah, put the pride flag up in the background.
yeah, dude.
This is what we get for
Gun
H1B.
laws suck. We need to have more gun laws.
Well, it's funny you were going to say that about H1B1 or
That's what we,
H1B Austin, because everyone that I email for the support team is like Indian. So I'm like, are you here or are you there?
I mean, you get what you pay for.
I know. So let's cut it over to the Democratic side. Who do you think is going to run on the Democratic side? I know, Josh, we talked a little bit about this. Go, so throw it. I'm going to throw it to you.
Okay, so because I kind of want to hear Austin after me because I think Austin's either gonna laugh or have. So I still think Newsom is still in play. Don't know if I feel like it would be a good thing or a bad thing, but I think Newsom's still in play there. I don't really have anybody that's like a stand. I mean, maybe some senator from the South. They might try to do. We were talking earlier about the dominance of the South in politics and a lot of other areas, but like I could see them trying to pull like a senator from like the South or a governor.
You think like Ossoff? They're gonna like pull Ossoff in to run for Democrat?
Hell, dude, we might
maybe
see
not Ossoff, but like Warnock or someone like that.
We might see Fetterman. We don't really? know. No, I mean I'm just joking about the Fetterman thing, but like yeah, I could see like a Warnock or like or Ossoff, dude. I'll tell you though, when I tell you about a fucked not to change subject here, when I tell you about a fucked election, dude. They called me and my best friend Will from Texas that we were working on. We just finished Diana's campaign and we're doing some light finishing up touches for Cruz at the end of it. And they called us that night, election night. They're like, "Hey, we're going to a runoff," and they were in the victory room in Georgia, and they were in the victory room. The Republicans saw it was over, and then we got a call and it's like, "Hey, we're going to a runoff. Can you all be here in a month?" And I was like, "No, I'm taking a break." And then next thing you know, here we are. But yeah, I could see a Warnock or Ossoff, whatever you want to call him. But I don't know. I think we'll either see a Democratic senator from the South, or we'll see like a Newsom. But I want to kick it over to Austin too because I want to hear his takes on this. But yeah.
What do you think?
So we got Shapiro in Pennsylvania, we got Pritzker in Illinois, we got Whitmer in Michigan. I'm with him on Newsom. Newsom is definitely like self-absorbed enough to even to try it. The one name I keep seeing thrown out a lot, and I don't know if it's just wish casting or the thing I think about with it, I always kind of have a little caution is because
it's the clicks.
Gallego, the guy that won the Arizona Senate race. I'm seeing that name a lot all of a sudden, and at first I'd be like, well, he's a first-term senator. I can't see it. Then I'm like, I have to stop myself. I'm like, so basically Obama. Because that was Obama's whole thing. He got elected in 2004, and he gets elected in 2008 as president. So I mean, that's a possibility. I could definitely see him running. He seems like he's shooting for the moderate Democrat vibe. So Gallego, Newsom, Whitmer, Pritzker, Shapiro. I feel like I'm forgetting somebody that's been kind of floated. Wasn't there Give me a second. I'm trying to think of it. AOC there's been some kind of people thinking some of the stuff she's been doing recently could be kind of setting herself up.
AOC, damn.
I don't.
A member of the squad, bro.
Let me see.
Wait a minute. Doesn't Kansas have a Democratic governor right now?
I think so.
Yes, they do.
I feel like I heard somebody suggest that as a dark horse. Now, do I think that's likely? No, but I mean,
no, God, no. Dear God, no.
But,
so, let me kind of throw this out there. I was looking for a list that I had for 2020, and I thought basically everyone I put on there I think would still kind of be good. I think. Do what?
You think they're in play in 20?
Well, I had a list before all this shit happened, of who I want. I think I made this in 2020, 2021 of okay, who I think could run in 2024 and be would easily win. I think people I think would be good is Mark Kelly. I think Andy Bashir would do it if he's really pushed to do it.
I forgot about that.
I think that
Yeah.
I don't know about the guys in Georgia. I could see them getting pulled for administrative jobs, but I don't know if they really want to have any of them run because they cannot win back.
Yeah,
And I think
that's also an issue with Georgia, is like you said. I do think there is, and that's why I'm also like it'd be very dark horsey. I don't see them letting the Democratic senators leave just because I don't think they think they'd win it back.
well, and I think Ossoff would be a good one. I mean, he's like 39 or 41 or something like that. He's young and like he'll be 45. He'll be like, kind of Obama age. Like I think
Let's
that
put a
could be
young
what
guy
people
in
are really
office.
wanting to do.
Dude, let's put a young guy in office, man. Dude, let's put
Um,
a 2-year-old in office.
I think Gretchen Whitmer. I think she'll probably be
Ooh.
someone to run.
Good call.
Now the only thing with her is I don't think she's kind of willing to. I think you kind of have to go against the machine a little bit, and I don't know if I think she's doing her time, but I don't really know if she's doing if she's doing enough to kind of like seal the deal. Like I feel like she's out there, she's doing stuff for the party, blah 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 blah. But I think if there's like, okay, now you got to run against people within the party, I don't know if she's like I think she's too friendly with people on the inside now to kind of be like, okay, like I'm gonna go against you in the primary. I think they're gonna run the Maryland governor, and I don't know why they'd ever do that. But I think I think they've been trying to get him to go up a little bit. So I think they're gonna run him. I don't know if they'll do AOC. I think like I could see them getting her to do it because I think the Democratic Socialist wing, the further left wing, um, is gonna want someone to run, and I don't know if I don't think they want to. Obviously, I don't think Bernie's gonna do it. I don't think they want Elizabeth Warren to do it because I think she's gonna be too old, and I think it's gonna be like, hey, we're not gonna do this.
Well,
So I think they're gonna be looking at someone else, and I think AOC is gonna be like that next person that's kind of in that people are gonna look at. That's a high stakes race. If she goes in and runs for the presidency, she probably can't run for her seat in New York. So if she's done, she's out. And I think that would be interesting to see. But I think those 5-6 guys or people are people I think they're gonna run. People talk about Amin Klobuchar and some of these other people. I think those are like admin, secretary,
vice president.
vice president. I think I think she could be upper level admin people. I don't know if she's would seriously be able to win in the presidency, even though I think people would like her.
Well, one thing I want to throw out there real fast, like we've mentioned all these names, but like most of these names are like white guys, which I think is kind of interesting.
Oh, Pete Buttigieg. People say he's going to run.
God, I hope not.
Speaking of white guys, right?
I mean,
Yeah.
White guys.
I mean, in a way, though, too, like, I am interested to see if, like, maybe the Democrats take that approach and they're like, okay, well, clearly the, Republicans are winning, running white guys and it's strictly male, maybe they're like, okay, maybe they do leave the progressive crap behind and it's like, let's
Run like a Pete.
Well, like too, the point a lot
Maybe.
of people are making to me is like, they've had Clinton fail in 2016, Biden worked out in 2020, but then, Harris couldn't seal the deal this year, so it's like, maybe they're going to be gun shy about nominating a woman next time. So I mean, that would
Trump,
kind of,
Trump being undefeated against the women, man, I think hurt.
I agree.
I saw
I think
I
that
saw,
hurt.
I saw a
Go ahead,
TikTok the other day. I saw a TikTok the other day. And it was like Trump rising from the grave in like a century to like keep his like undefeated record against women running for president.
I like that. I like when they're like. I like when they were like. It was like Trump versus women running for president. It was like prom Tom Brady. Like touchdowns.
And he's got Randy Moss and fucking Aaron Hernandez and Gronkowski out there to throw it to. And it's like, yeah, dude, I don't know if you're going to be able to win this one.
Yeah, dude, it's just, I mean, and like I said, it's not me trying to dig on,
Shit. Okay, keep going.
I am, I'm sorry, I'm like not trying to laugh at that chat. Okay. But yeah, I really do think there is like that level of like, okay, we've tried the woman thing, and like they're still gonna like, pander to that audience to get their votes and to get their like support. But I think that there's also a level of like, if we're gonna win this thing again, we're gonna have to run out a guy, and it's gonna have to be someone that's not crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, no offense, but dude, the far left stuff like does not work. Like the super far left stuff, it hasn't.
Yeah.
Uh, you know,
Well,
you,
and that's why I think like an Andy Bashir would do fine. I think he's set up well. Shapiro in Pennsylvania, I think he could be. Um, I think the thing with him is I think him and one or two of the other people that I mentioned, like I think they're people where you start digging a little bit, you might find some stuff that could snuff them out at the very beginning.
I swear to God, dude, if the Quakers get Shapiro elected, I'm gonna laugh my dick off, dude.
Um,
The Amish baby, we had the Amish
well,
here, dude.
but like it'll be, I don't know. I mean, I don't really know, and I think this is kind of shows where the Democratic Party is now. I don't think there's anyone who can kind of be on the right end who can kind of run against the main Democratic Party and then kind of come plant themselves firmly in the center and easily win the moderate votes. I think Andy Bashir's close. I think Mark Kelly could be someone that could do it. Um, and that's about it. I don't really know if there's too many other people that could kind of do that kind of thing. And I think, if Democrats are serious, maybe they'll try to be competitive. But I honestly think that, and given the way that I'm seeing stuff on the state party level, I don't think they're going to be in a position to where they're going to be organized enough to run like their candidate, or to run a center candidate to where they're willing to appeal to everybody, get everybody on message, and really have this big tent party. I think what they're going to do is say, "Hey, look, we can't field anybody super great. We're going to throw some moderate guy or you know, we're going to throw some Shapiro or a Newsom out there, and we're just going to kind of let them figure it out."
I agree.
Um,
That's fair.
Now, I think Newsom might be the one who might be the closest to being kind of more anti-party. Um, I think he is a talented enough politician to where he can tomorrow or at the end of the year be like, hey, like the party's doing bad. I'm going to kind of be a little bit more conservative, enact some of these policies, and kind of try to be this moderate candidate. Like I think he's more chameleon-y to where he can kind of move and be wherever you need to be. And I think that's probably a saving grace that he does have.
I agree. But I mean, we just, we got to fix, not just presidency, but we got a lot of powers that got to get fixed. I mean, you know, even our leadership in the House and in the Senate, it's just like, come on, dude.
So what, you don't think like someone like Mike Johnson is?
Bro, like Austin's fucking meme, and it's like Mike Johnson's like inbox of text, and it's like, like Kevin McCarthy. It's like suck on that bitch, like it's
Yeah,
like
fuck you. I
fuck
think
you.
I think he's like a guy who's like, hey, like I'm trying to be nice. I'm trying to help everybody out.
He's
I
trying
really
to.
don't want to be here.
Yeah, that is Mike Johnson's fifty. It's like I'm just trying to like get along, man. Um, which is funny because like when it first came up, everybody was like singing the praises. Like I'll never forget the like I heard like two congressmen was like he's a God fearing man who's praying over this country. Mike Johnson's this and that. And I'm like, okay, great. Let me see what he does because I'm all for that. But I'm like, did God slide him the offering plate and was like, all right, get some shit done? Like, like you know,
I think this year, I think this 2025 is going to be the year if Mike Johnson kind of stumbles and fails a little bit. I think that he for sure is done. Like I think they're giving him 1 year, and I think they're like, hey, like you didn't have the Senate, you passed some stuff, but we didn't get anything through the Senate. So now that you got the Senate, like you're working with favorable people, you've got to be able to produce. And you got Trump there now, and he can help in whatever way, but you have to be able to produce legislation that is going to be good for us. Like they passed HR 2 or whatever it was. It's like okay, like hey, like now that we have to be held accountable, oh, we're going to do HR2, or maybe we're going to do HR2 plus and have a little bit more in there that'll
Yeah.
help us out, and be like, okay, now that we can have a little bit more leverage, like we expect more to come out of this. And I think this year is going to be the year where they're going to say like, okay, like let's see what you got, and if not, it's going to be like, okay, we're going to throw a Jim Jordan in there.
I agree. Jim Jordan, Jesus.
Well, but that's the thing is, it's like, who would you even replace him with? Like if you get rid of Mike Johnson, I think it will not be good for the party.
No, it
But
wouldn't be.
like, I don't know. Like, it's like I don't know who you even replace him with. I don't think anyone would have said, "Yo, yeah, Mike Johnson's the guy who would get the nod this time." But here we are.
Have you guys seen that meme I sent in the group chat? Where it was like
Mhm.
Mike
Mhm.
Johnson had WhatsApp, and
Kim McCarthy's like, how'd that turn out for you, bitch? Like,
then it's just like everybody else just like kill yourself.
So what about you, Austin? What do you think? What do you think for Senate or not Senate? House? Do you think you're going to see any changes in leadership there?
It's going to be a shit show. I mean, there was already reporting earlier tonight where it was like, yeah, we don't know if he has enough votes to get reelected for speaker, and it's like,
He just has one, right? They have one that they can kind of lose.
yeah, like it literally just takes one defection, and that's enough. And it's like, we talked about this in one of the earlier episodes. We're like, why is Trump pulling all these Republicans out of the House? Because it's
See,
like their
that's the-
majority is so slick. And now
Dude,
this
it
is,
was so stupid.
and now here we are. What'd you
me and Andrew had this conversation about. So I was in DC,
Mhm.
and literally like every Congress member that I've talked to up there that I've worked with and like love and have a good relationship with, all of them, number one scared tactic thing right now has been, we love that Trump's here and doing his thing, but like if this thing gets down to one, like you said, one rhino, one defection, you're screwed.
Yep.
Or like one guy from like the Freedom Caucus, because I mean, like the whole budget debate, the thing Trump really wanted was to like kill the, the what they call it, the deficit limit, the debt,
Yeah.
I can't, whatever it's called.
Debt ceiling.
Yeah, and it's like, well, now, buddy, if you guys got a one majority, all it takes is a couple of Freedom House guys to say, go screw yourself, and here we might default on our national debt, which is horrendous. I mean, like, and that's not out of the realm of possibility. It nearly happened in, what was it, like 2011 or 2013?
Yeah.
So I mean, like, here we are.
Yeah, I know, and I think it was like, it's not Jim, is it Roy Cooper, right? I think he's the one in Texas, or it was the guy in Kentucky. He was already like, yeah, like I'm not voting for what's his name, Mike Johnson. And so it's literally like anyone else says, hey, like we're not doing it, it's like done.
It
You're
literally,
done, buddy.
like the only way he could save himself is he made a deal with the Democrats, and at that point, the whole.
Wow, yeah.
And then, but I mean, like that'll come with so many strings attached to it. It's like, honestly, this whole thing already feels like it's coming off the rails. Just being honest, like this whole thing feels like it's already falling apart. I mean,
so I want to ask these questions. I need to plug in my computer, but I'm going to ask them, so I'm going to come off camera. But let me start off with you, Josh. Seeing how this has gone so far with H-1B, with Trump, and a lot of this infighting with his cabinet picks, some of the policies that he's just kind of started to stake out. If you or an average voter knew that now, do you think you would have changed your vote back in November? I don't think you would, but you think someone else would.
Like for what? Like for who?
Trump.
No.
But do you think someone else would?
Yes.
How likely do you think that is?
Pretty likely. I mean,
Or have enough people to where Kamala would have won?
no. I think that thing was done too big. I don't think you'd have swayed the vote. I mean, none.
What do you think, Austin?
Do I think it enough she would win? No, I agree with him on that. Would it have swayed my vote? At this point, probably not. I mean, I was a 2016 vote, and then I was a 2020 write-in, and I could list my reasons why I was a 2020 write-in instead of voting for him. This year I voted for him. Do what now?
Was it 2020 write-in?
Yeah, that was me, because I was just like, it wasn't like I didn't give a shit about the mean tweets or whatever, but it was just like, like the one thing that really irritated me right for the election was like they gave that sweetheart deal to the Sacklers over the
That was
opioid
weird.
stuff. And I'm from Appalachia. That really hit us hard. Like I know people that died. I know people like even in my family like addictions like, and that just really rubbed me the wrong way. I was like, one of the big reasons I voted for you was to, like get this problem fixed. And here, the people that caused it, you're letting them off with a slap on the wrist. It's like okay. And there was
Yeah.
other stuff, but stuff like that just really irritated me. And this year, like my vote was basically, and I got to keep it quiet. Like it was just more like, for one, like abortion. Like I definitely am pro-life, so that was a big factor. And then two, it was just like I was, he has made some signals he would be open to like a deal on Ukraine. I think that's the right foreign policy, and I do think we need to, shift our foreign policy focus to Latin America. So I am kind of like okay with that. So I mean, there was different stuff I
I'll
could
be a
just.
buck, though, dude. I'll be a buck. So like in early 23, I guess last year. No, 24 was last year. Shoot, I'm it's weird. It's 25. So early last year.
COVID was 5 years ago. Think about that for a second.
That's crazy, dude. I would have been a DeSantis vote had, from January until the end of May, I was pro DeSantis until his god awful campaign. And dear God, that campaign team needs to like never run a campaign ever again in their life. But
They need the Mike Johnson and WhatsApp treatment.
dude, it was like I'm not joking. Like, I took offense to it as a campaign kid that's grown up in it, ran them. I'm 9-2 in total campaigns. So like to like I'm not saying I could have ran a presidential and won it, but like just from the sake of like the overall aspect of how it's ran and like the money that DeSantis had and like the good name that he built up to go out there and stuff like that. I mean, shit.
Well, from what I heard, it was the fundamentals. Like it was just like fundamental campaigning. Like
That's why I was mad. I was like, it's
like it wasn't like strategy. Like
No,
like
it
you
was
could
just-
like I know that he switched his strategy 2 or 3 times, but it's like hey, like just like the fundamentals you didn't have. Now I will say this: there were a lot more congressmen who maybe you didn't see in the news or on Fox News or whatever it is who supported DeSantis, but they supported DeSantis, like Rich McCormick, my congressman. He was a DeSantis supporter. And then once DeSantis got out, he didn't go Tulsi, but he said once DeSantis got out, I'm going Trump. And I think that kind of shows something sometimes, where I'm like, like the Republican Party, like it's
Dude,
kind
I
of
dude, I met
loosely
people
held together. And like I remember, I think I real quick, Josh, I went to I think it was like a Rich McCormick's town hall. And he was even sitting there, and they had someone come up there, and he was like, "I don't care what beef you have." And this was maybe August or September. He's like, "Hey, I don't care what beef you have, what your views with certain people in the party, blah 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 blah. Like we are together, and we're going to win this vote." And I was like, "There's really people like within the Republican Party that are kind of like splitting and trying to move and do all these different kind of things." And it makes me think like okay, like if I was someone and I see this now and it's like, hey, I was voting for Trump, but I wasn't voting for this. And that's why I asked that question because I didn't know. And I don't know if you guys are one of those or if you guys have heard that. What do you think, Josh?
So I mean, it's different. So like for me, obviously, like when DeSantis stuck up there, I was like, I was Trump. But I knew people that were like DeSantis had them so far where it was like, okay, DeSantis is the guy, and then they switched over to Nikki Haley.
Really?
Yeah, I knew a good amount of people that switched over, and simply not because of any like policy she was doing. It's just like it's like I feel like Haley's our only chance to win the House.
Mm.
It's like I think Nikki like literally like I asked like a couple people. I'm like, I mean, going through everything with that. Like I would ask people like, so like why why her? And the and like I said, it's not a lot of people. I'm talking like less than 10. They all were just like, she's the only chance we have to win the White House. And I was like, damn. I was like, did DeSantis get you that far into it? Like, I mean, I was about it. I was about DeSantis, but like, to turn around and do that, no, there's no way.
Yeah. Any last thing on that, Austin?
I mean,
because from a Democrat, I look at this and I'm like, I voted for Harris, but
Yeah, your wife texted me.
I
Your wife
know,
texted me angry about it.
I'm still I voted for Harris because it's the same reason why I voted for Stacey, because I was like, I'm voting for someone and I helped on their campaign, I helped them do this stuff, and because of that, I feel like it's more advantageous and beneficial for me, right? Like here in Atlanta, here in Georgia, like it's more advantageous for me to be on a campaign and that campaign win than if they don't win. And I'll be honest, like I worked for her campaign and I still was like, I think Trump's gonna win this. You know what I mean? Like I'm still kind of aware of what was going on. And I like to I'm fairly much in the middle. And I will tell you, seeing what I'm seeing now, I'm like, this is fucking stupid. Like H1B, like I'm on the MAGA side of this, where I'm like, we need to reform H1Bs. We probably need to further restrict it more. We need to do all these other kinds of things. And if you go and look at where MAGA was in 2016, they were like, yeah, like that's where we're at. And now you have these grifters kind of coming in, kind of mixing that up. And it's like, I'd be like, hey, like if I could vote on a single issue, I would have voted for Republicans on this. And I think you guys are like, I'm already thinking I need to vote for Harris on this more than Republicans on this.
Well, I mean,
it was a single issue.
I don't know if you guys saw it tonight, but even Bernie Sanders came out and attacked the H-1B thing tonight. So I mean,
yeah, he's always been against it.
I mean, it's such an obvious, and like, I don't know, like me and you have talked like in private about like how like I feel about a lot of things, and it's just like I don't know. I just feel like at this point our system is just like so like it's decrepit. It definitely feels like it's kind of on the verge of like I don't know necessarily giving away or like. But like, there is a sense in the air like this whole system is just like, and I think this dysfunction because it's like we had the first term of Trump, which was just pure chaos. We now had the Biden term, which was I don't think I want to say it was as chaotic, but it was also like I would say more disastrous in a lot of ways. And then this is already off to like the second term is already off to like not a good start as as we're putting it, and it's like
no, it's not off to a good start.
Oh, and to the like to make a general point, I know we're kind of focused on the politics angle, but I feel like we got I do feel like I need to mention it. Like we're on the second day of January, and we've already had like 2 terrorist attacks, and like I don't know if you guys saw this right before we got on. There was like they just arrested a guy, and I think it was like Idaho for like planting bombs on like the railways.
Listen, dude, these terrorist attacks, dude, Jesus, you start attacking my sugar bowl, man, dude. I'll go back to war right now. You take away my like that. You take away my football for a day, I'll go back to war right now.
Well, I don't want to get on that too much, but I'm already looking at this and I'm like, I don't know if I'm Trump, like this helps me. Like all these people that like I'm not like all these people that like take these people that are doing these things and take the groups out of it. And I'm like, okay, we got these terrorists, we've got ISIS. We've got, all this shit happening. And it's like, okay, like I'm going, like this incentivizes me further to take more action than what I want or what I would have done before. And I'm like Trump's not even in office and he's just being given, things like, hey, like here you go. Like you want to do something with these things? Here's some ammunition.
He's definitely one of the luckiest sons of bitches I've ever seen in my life.
Dude, and sometimes, man, that's why I'm sitting here and I'm like, man, maybe this is like I said when Biden after the election on the way out, I said this. I said maybe he's trying to give Vladimir or try to give Ukraine more leeway to use weapons to almost kind of put a little bit of an escalation and put a little bit more of Russia on its heels. Right, like, hey, now you guys can kind of do whatever you want. This is going to go to Trump. Trump can use this. And I'm almost just kind of like, I feel like that's what it kind of is. It's like Biden's on the way out and Trump is just getting all these goodies and he can be like, hey, I'm going to play it whatever way I want to play it. And I think he could knock 2 or 3 of these big issues out like early within maybe the first year,
I would agree.
And I think immigration is going to be one of them. I think if he really wanted to, he could go in and change it.
I think the attacks help with the immigration stuff. For sure.
Do you think? Go ahead.
But like, okay, like I get where you're coming from on that, but like the thing that goes through my head so much on this right now, as far as the immigration stuff, it's like he's not using it though. That's what kills me about it, because it's like you could really, I mean, like this guy that did the New Orleans thing, he was a U.S. citizen. It wasn't like he was I mean, like you could make a point, like okay, even legal, like the whole, like see, even legal immigration you can make that point, but it's like the whole H-1B thing, like they
But
just don't. It's like I don't even know how to phrase it at this point. It's just like to me it just comes across as like really stupid.
are you talking about the card guy, right?
Yeah, the one in Las Vegas. Well, no, that was Las Vegas. Or wait, do you mean the guy that like? This is really sad. We have to like debate which car guy it is. Like the one that ran over people in New Orleans.
The one in New Orleans or the one in Las Vegas?
That's my
Well,
point.
well,
We're
the one in
really
New Orleans. Do you think not to be funny too much, but do you think that Kirby Smart for a second thought it was one of his players at first?
Jesus Christ.
He's like,
I mean,
Well, I mean, honestly, if they had
Sorry.
drugs in the car, it wouldn't have surprised me.
sorry. But no, I mean, yeah.
I mean, just being honest with ourselves. I mean, like, this has become such like a daily reality to us. I mean, it's like, and I'm not trying to make like the whole like but it's like,
glad that we're desensitized to it, like you said.
yeah, that's that's what the word I was looking for.
Like we're debating, and it's like it's kind of normal now. Like if you'd have told me, like, hell, flashback, let's say 15 years ago. I mean, we were younger and stuff, but like if our parents would have seen something like this happen like 15 years ago, dude, like the country would have been in like complete dismay. Like I'm talking like this whole thing was nothing. It was like, oh damn, okay, we're gonna have extra security. Sugar Bowl goes on tomorrow, and then like you said, Austin, like Trump's not really done anything with it yet, and it's like I'm sitting here, I'm like, okay, like kind of a big deal,
I think it's interesting that, I think it's interesting that this is almost kind of like a foreign agent doing this, like this was an American. This wasn't like this wasn't the immigrant throwing fire on the girl in New York City or whatever it is, or some Al Qaeda people from over there coming over here to do the attack. It's like both of these attacks are like people in the United States.
Yeah.
And especially military, which I still am trying to figure out what's going on there. But I've heard some people like, oh, we've got some extremists and radicals in the military, and I'm like, okay, maybe. But it's like we see that, and I'm like that and the citizen thing, and I don't know about the guy in Las Vegas, but the one in New Orleans is like was radicalized, and I'm like, you were in the military and you were radicalized. I'm like, what the fuck? I was like that just doesn't make sense to me.
There is a lot of weird shit goes down at Fort Bragg. That was the connection that came out today. They both were at Fort Bragg.
Brad or Hood?
Bragg. They were both in Bragg, which is tied into a lot of spec ops stuff, like Intel 80 seconds down there. I mean, that's here in my neck of the woods. Like, I don't know if you guys remember, like earlier this year, there was that.
Well, hold on. It's not necessarily your neck of the woods. It's more east. It's like 4 hours east.
Maybe about 2. But you know what I mean. I mean, but like, there was a whole thing. I don't know if you guys remember that earlier in the year, where like that special forces guy killed like a Chechen that was like scoping out his house or something. There's a lot of weird shit goes on around that area, and like the fact they were both at Fort Bragg and stuff. Like, there's.
But that doesn't really. Does that really say anything? Because Fort Bragg and Fort Benning are like one of the biggest military bases in the country, and like everybody goes through it.
For sure. But like the fact that like Bragg is like tied to so many like intelligence things. I mean, I'm not trying to say like tinfoil hat, but it is kind of interesting in that regard.
So like I thought this was I thought this kind of reminded me of, was the Fort Hood shooting in like 2012, 2011, 2010. Okay, so this kind of reminded me of like that. Maybe I thought it was maybe 2011, but it's kind of like, okay, it's like this, like this wasn't like, this was like a domestic guy who did these things, and it makes me just kind of be like, okay, like how did Obama kind of handle that? Is this like a reoccurring trend we're gonna see, and everything like that? I don't know, and that's why I'm like this should be kind of easy for Trump to be like, hey, like here's a playbook that we can go with this, and I think it would be interesting to be like, okay, like why are all these people in the military radicalized, or why are people who are swearing oath to the Constitution being radicalized by Islam?
Well, for the Fort Hood thing, a quick point I want to make on that: guys that got wounded in that, they had to fight like a decade-long legal battle just to get awarded medals for that. Like the Army had a report in 2013 that was like, yeah, we don't think they deserve anything for this. Like just like the fact that they got like wounded or killed in a terrorist attack, we don't think they deserve anything. And like that was a whole So I mean that I think kind of in of itself explains why we've reached the point where some of these guys get radicalized because it's like, dude, like you got to think a lot of these guys, like especially Afghanistan, they go through all this stuff and then the way they get treated. I mean, I work, my background and like stuff. I see it a lot. Like I've had a lot of guys tell me they're like, like the VA, for example, they're like, I think the VA just hates us, and it's like you got to think about how radicalizing and how demoralizing that would be to be like, okay, I went over to Afghanistan, I did like so many combat tours, and then I come back here and I can't even get like a fucking disability thing to go to the VA and get health care. I mean, like there's, and I
But
think
it's interesting. It's interesting that like that group, the white, I think the guy in New Orleans wasn't necessarily white, but
yeah,
you
it
know,
was like Arab or something.
yeah, but like military men, probably 90% go for Trump. And it's like, okay, Trump gets elected and now you're doing these things? Like, I think it's interesting because it's like, okay, these acts happened on what, January 1st?
Mhm.
I think it's hard to say that they were planned or thought of before the election. Like, it's almost like something happened between now and the election, whether in New Orleans is the guy's wife dumping him or whatever it is. But I think it's interesting that it's like, it almost seems like, okay, because the election happened, these things happened. But it doesn't make sense because Donald Trump would be the people who these people would be supporting, So like that doesn't make sense to me.
I mean, the whole thing. The point I want to go back to is like, I mean, earlier I said I do feel like this system has kind of reached. I don't know what the right word to use for it, but I mean, like, it's kind of like you're saying, like the stuff that don't make sense, and that's kind of, I think, encapsulates it in a way because it's like the trust in the system is at all time low. I mean, you see that in just about every institution now has like negative ratings. People, there was like a thing came out the other day. I thought I'd sent it in the group chat. I might have forgot, but it was like, oh yeah, like 60% of like Gen Z Americans think democracy is like fake, and it's like that is not. Historically speaking, when you're reaching this point where like super majorities are like, yeah, the system doesn't serve my interests. I have no, it doesn't work for me at all. It's fake. It's rigged. Like, we can say like people have been saying that for years, and like it's as far as like the polling, the percentages keep going up, and now I think we're starting to feel kind of like the ramifications of that. It's no longer just like an abstract. Okay, people think this whole system's rigged. You now reach the point where like people are like, okay, maybe the way to resolve this is like I go out and shoot a healthcare CEO in the street, or like today I go I go plant bombs on their railway tracks and stuff. We've really reached the point to where something's got to give, and I kind of feel like
So it's almost kind of like the meme has become self-aware.
yeah,
When you got the buddy who's like, doing something, it's just a meme in your friend group, and it's like, oh, now he knows that like this is something that he's doing, and now it's like a completely different like situation.
the only thing is I don't know even if memes the right word for it. I get what you're saying. I'm not trying to like argue.
No,
I'm
no, no.
saying
I'm just
but like it's just things are really coming apart, and I've been telling you that for a while. Like even before we started doing this, I kept making the point. Like I just like I'm seeing this stuff. I mean, for us, this is like strange and like unexpected. You never would, it's kind of outside our, lived experience, I guess, and a word to use for it. But like historically, a lot of this stuff you see it a lot. Like I'm a big student of history. Like I've made this point before. Like a lot of the stuff we're seeing right now, I think has precedence in historical events in the last century and or even before. Like it's like I said, like you reach a point, trust in the system's low. There's no buy-in in the next generation. They think it's rigged, and then you can only tolerate that for so long before like the Luigi Mangione thing. I mean, that's you could chalk it off as just one crazy guy, but it's like I said, now we've got a situation where you've had two or three crazy guys in the space of 48 hours go do something. I mean, there is I can't remember what the term is for it. It's like mimetic terrorism or something like that. And it's like, yeah, you're really kind of reaching that point where it's like a self-sustaining thing. I mean, the real wake-up call I think for a lot of people should have been like, okay, like boomers, Xers, and all them were like, oh, this assassination thing, that was horrible. But then like all the young people on TikTok were like, okay, this guy's a hero. Like that really should have been a wake-up call to a lot of people.
Yeah.
Like, wait a minute, that we've really reached that point. And I'm not taking a position either way on that. I mean, it's whatever. But like, I just as kind of I don't want to say objective observer, but like kind of like a guy just kind of sitting here looking at it dispassionately. It's like, yeah, this is not the sign of like a healthy political system at all.
Yeah. So then, but let's flip it back to Josh. So, based off of what Austin said there, what do you think? Like, you're going to run a campaign in 2028, and you're going to put some issues in there and some things you want to highlight for your candidate. What are you going to tell them?
Which side of the aisle are we talking?
So if you're, I guess, Republican or Democrat, you give me both. Give me both.
You're saying like what issues would I like if I'm running the
Like
campaign?
if you were to pull JD Vance over and you're say, hey JD, like here's some topics you need to focus on to address these things that Austin was saying about how this country just looks like it's just not going in the right direction. It's in dismay. It's people are disgruntled. If you're to pull him over and say, hey, here's the things I talk about, what would they be? Like what's almost kind of like what would be that agenda or that platform?
I would
Just
is it
3 or
like what I
4
would
for
do?
a candidate.
Is it like what I would do or what I think would happen?
What you would tell your candidate to do. You're the campaign manager for JD Vance. What are you gonna tell him? Campaign manager / strategist.
I mean, you're always gonna pull up the fucking inflation and low tax crap. I mean, that's just part of life. But AI probably. I'm
Say
probably
that again. You say AI.
AI. Obviously we have Elon. I'm sure that we'll have some form of knowledge and more things that we'll see from it. But I definitely would, if I'm JD Vance's campaign manager, things aren't, we don't have a better understanding of it, or if it's, kind of just sitting there, I definitely am like, let's address that. Um, make people feel like their privacy is okay and that, it's not just this. We're not just,
Yeah.
data mining for your soul. So I definitely would go AI. I'd probably go if it's not fixed by then. Probably stay on the immigration.
So I mean, it sounds like kind of a lot of 2024.
2024.
Yeah.
Kind of. Because I mean, no offense, but I mean, like 4 years, he's got one term. I mean, I think it's more, Trump. Like we'll see, like you said, I think we'll see all the stuff that he does this year, and then it'll be okay. Spike the football, call today.
So, Austin, what would you tell a Democratic candidate? Like, what would you tell them to focus on?
Like a specifically Democratic candidate?
Yep.
Go talk to the guys at the Liberal Patriot. I think I've sent their stuff to you before, but like they're pretty like I don't know if they would identify as blue dogs, but they're pretty like they take a very like moderate position on social issues without really compromising on like economics, and I think that's kind of the winning formula at this point. I feel like, I mean, certain stuff besides certain stuff, like obviously, like I think abortion's kind of, that, but like I think a lot of like the pushback the Democrats got this year, I think, was like they just went so far left on social issues that was really off putting to a lot of people. And like that was something that I think we talked about before. Like that was really off putting, especially demon Hispanics. Like a lot of the stuff they're pushing now. But as far as like specific things, I think I mentioned it on like a different episode, or I mentioned it in our group chat, one or the other. But it was like, Harris back when she ran in 2020 had this really great income tax proposal.
Yep.
Or it was like a tax credit, and the way it worked out was like, I think like I'd have to. I know I said in the group chat, but I can't remember the exact amount off the top of my head. It was like, if they passed it, it would have put like an extra 12,000 in people's like if you were a family, you would get like an extra 12,000 back in taxes or something like that. The way it worked out, and it wasn't that much more expensive than the existing system, so you could have reworked it to fix that. I mean, stuff like that would go a long way, and like. I'm trying to think how I could phrase it. Like I think me and you definitely agree a lot on economics. Like I'm very like, I don't think left wing is the right term, but I would definitely say I'm more populist. Like for me, that's a big thing. But and then like, social issues, I'm a lot more right wing than you are. But like, I think if you just did stuff like that, like I mean, there's some, and like we've discussed this before. There's so many things you could do to help the working class. Like I sent the thing where like the CBO had looked at like if we did do something like universal health care, like don't be afraid to do stuff like that. I mean, the fact that like people were cheering on the dude that killed a healthcare CEO should tell you people would even a lot of Trump voters would probably be okay with universal health care at this point. I mean,
Well, I think a lot of the healthcare stuff there, I think a lot of that is I mean, I don't want to say it's class, but it's kind of like that, right? Like,
mhm.
you know, keeping what you have versus going to a universal system. It's like, okay, who's kind of benefiting here? Um, but it sounds like what you're telling me is it's almost just all economic. Like all these issues we are seeing is economically rooted. And I know you could say, well, everything's economically rooted.
Well,
But it almost sounds like you're saying that, like, oh, because like people are having all this violence and aggression and everything like that, it's all due to some economic
yeah.
cause.
I mean, to borrow, the James Carville, it's the economy, stupid. I mean,
I know, but like, I mean, I think that kind of discounts, like, okay, like, I think there's like, I think it's you have to also talk about like political polarization and all these other kind of things, and like
but no, okay,
communities kind of being more isolated on where they live, affecting how they vote. And I think you have a lot more of that kind of stuff there. That's also a factor with economics.
but I mean, stop and think about what causes that.
I mean, economics sucked in the 70s, but we didn't have people treating each other the way they're treating each other now.
We literally had people bombing Congress in the 70s. That's something
Right.
like Weather Underground was a thing back in the 70s. I mean, there was multiple. I mean, Gerald Ford had like 3 or 4 assassination attempts on him. I mean, like, I think people forget like how bad. I'm not using this to attack you or anything. I'm just making the point.
No,
That
no, no.
The 70s were a very violent time. It's just been kind of memory hold.
Okay,
But,
but
like,
you go to the
well,
30s. I know you can say, well, FDR, was almost assassinated several times, but it's like, okay, like put the assassination stuff away. I don't know if normal everyday American people were so divided on things that used to not be an issue.
Well, I mean, let's take the FDR example. Like the whole reason he got buy-in on the New Deal from a lot of groups that normally wouldn't have done it was like there. Like, you can go look this up. There was a lot of fear, like, okay, if we don't do something, there's going to be like a communist revolution here. Because I mean, like, you had what was like a 20 to 25% reduction in GDP. Like 50% of people were under the poverty line. I mean, and then there was people that were saying the New Deal wasn't going far enough. I mean, there was Huey Long down in Louisiana. I mean, I, I know it's not like a Marxist because their whole like analytical framework is like everything is downstream of material factors, but I do think there is something to that basic analysis because it's like, okay, political polarization. What's super polarizing in this day and age? Well, I mean, a lot of the stuff you can trace back to 2008 and how that went down. I mean, there's a lot of people I know, and I'm sure there's a lot of people if you're like, oh, my parents are divorced. Well, if you sit down and talk to them with it, you'd realize like, oh, they got divorced around the recession. There was a lot of families that fell apart at that time. Or, there was, if you like, there's so many, you can go look at so many different statistical frameworks and be like, okay, like this problem became a lot worse after 2008, or like, this community never really recovered. And there's a lot, then it wasn't just the 2008 recession. There's a lot of evidence that like, monetary policy at that time, trade policy with China, whatever, that decimated a lot of the working class out in the Midwest. I mean, there's a lot. I think you can't discount the fact that like, and like I'll agree with you. Like there is to a certain extent, a lot of it is, like social issues. They exist in themselves, and I mean, like I said earlier, I'm a lot more right wing on social issues than you are. But it's like, I just think you can't discount how much that is downstream of that. Like a lot of in prior episodes we talked about like why family formation is so hard now. Why are we seeing this and that? And a lot of it comes down to like men just don't make as much as they used to. They no longer, like that's created like an imbalance and like that. And then like, okay, well then downstream of that, you got lower fertility rates, less marriages, yada yada yada. If you don't have, I mean, let's just be honest. Let's call a spade a spade. If you're a guy and you have no realistic chances of getting married, that's going to be really radicalizing.
Yeah. Well, you'd be an incel, right?
Well, yeah, I mean,
pretty close. I mean, I think I told you. Did I tell you this? And I think maybe I told you this, Josh. The one I aspired to a Marxist theory, and I think it is all about the relationship between labor and business, and it's basically like where do you want to be on this, and like that. I feel like that is the constant issue that we face economically with.
That's
right?
kind of,
Like,
yeah.
like it. I mean, it is like for example, why do we care that all these jobs are shipped over to Asia or whatever? Well, it's because like we needed those to survive, blah blah blah, and like that's why like I don't want to give universal basic income a room to kind of grow in my mind. But it's almost kind of like, but it kind of does, right? Like, hey, like, okay, like make it so people can work if they want to. If they don't, they don't. Like everybody's getting to kind of take care of the same, and we can, just automate everything, have very few people working, blah, blah, blah. Like people who really want to work in these positions, they can do it, yada, yada, yada. And I just think about it and I'm like, that's fundamentally the issue. Like how do you handle this labor issue and this worker issue with businesses? And I think a lot of the reason why we're having economic issues like you're talking about is because there's an immigration component. If the bottom rungs of the economy are having to compete with low wage laborers, like it's almost like a fountain. Like it's supposed to kind of go up, and then once you get to the top, it's supposed to dribble out and kind of meet somewhere in the middle and kind of circulates, right? And if you don't let the water kind of go up, you're never going to have people being able to move up economically, and you will have issues. And it's like for me, I'm like that's why immigration to me is so important, because it's like that also feeds into a lot of this economics and ultimately labor. And so if you want people to have higher wages and things like that, you got to cut out some of this immigration stuff, you know. Um, so yeah, so I don't know. I mean that's always been a theory of mine where I'm like, if someone can tell me a way to fix that works and makes sense, like I think we will see a new age in America.
Well, a point I want to make on that real quick is this is something that really, like, I agree with you. Like, it really does come down to kind of like a us versus them kind of thing with the elite, or at least the present elite. Like, they're they're making the whole point like, oh, AI is going to do this and it's going to do that, but they're not putting like, to use a euphemism. I'm sure we'll like we all three get, and anybody else don't get it. Well, you're not a Southerner. Put their money where their mouth is.
Mm-hmm.
In the sense, it's like, okay, if you guys really believe that, then why are you importing all these millions of like new workers? Like that literally makes no sense
Yeah.
unless like deep down, a lot of that AI stuff is just kind of like an excuse not to like make basic investments, or it's very much. And I think we've talked about this before. At least I know I brought it up. It's like a lot of our issues now are like who's in power, like the money classes, and that. Like we'll use that term. They're just so short-sighted, and a lot of that kind of goes back to like the 80s or so. Like in last 50, really in the last 50 years, we developed like a really short-term mindset, and I think that's just kind of a sign of how, like going back to the point I made earlier about how our political system has gotten. Like it's very short-sighted, and it's very like kind of if you got mine kind of mindset anymore. And it's like there's no more thinking like, okay, yeah, this might be good for me now, but like what happens when all these people that now, you know, I just took their livelihood away? I'm sure they'll just lay down and accept it. I mean, it's really just creating a tinderbox. There's no other way to put it. I mean, it's if you genuinely think AI is going to take away all the jobs, what do you think is going to happen with all these millions of immigrants you're importing right now? I mean, like, that's just creating a situation where instead of having, let's say, 5 million people you got to worry about, now you're going to have 10 million people to worry about. And it's like, it's just an excuse to have, just, like on the H1B debate, to kind of make the point, like, a lot of the pro people on that side be like, well, they have regulations how much they can pay them. Yeah, they do. But the part that gets left out is like, you can put more on
Plus or
them,
minus like 10%, right? Or 20%.
something like that. But it's also like there's under the table stuff in the sense that like, hey, if you don't work, these extra hours off the clock, I'll fire you, and then you'll lose your visa and have to go back to your home country. I mean, that happens. So yeah, you can make the point like, oh, I pay them the same. It's just because they're better. It's like, no, dude, it's because me and you both know that like you can threaten them and they'll do extra stuff for you. That's like technically illegal, but like they don't have the resources to fight it out in court or whatever.
I mean, and this is one thing and to bring it back to kind of what's happening now, and bring it back to Vivek and what he's doing is, I honestly, I was just saying about this. I think H1B1, or H1B, there is an H1B1, but I was looking at it and I was like, I don't want to go down this fucking rabbit hole. But so there are H1Bs, And I think that that is the equivalent of basically illegal, unskilled immigration is to working class people. You know, like that's like working class people are upset with illegal, unskilled immigration because those are the people who can take their jobs, blah 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 blah. And I think H-1B visas is the same as or the equivalent thing to middle class people like us. And I was thinking about it today because I work with some people who are in India and some of these contracting firms, and I'm sitting here and I was thinking about it, and I'm like, this is just like some call center person out in India who's doing this and doing the bare minimum and does like a lot of these administrative things, and they're just getting them to do it because they don't want to pay anyone here to do the work, and they don't want to, maybe some of those are things I could do or whatever it is, and I'm like I could get paid more money, but it's one of those things where I was like that kind of pisses me off because it's almost kind of like we're competing against each other in the workplace. And then that's when I was like, "Oh
It
my
is.
god,
I mean,
that's exactly like unskilled workers in, say, manual construction jobs or, landscaping, food service, etc."
I mean, that's the
It's
whole
the same
point.
thing.
And like I've pointed out before, like there's been a lot of stuff coming out where like they like it because if you guys are if you're fighting them and and they're fighting you, like they ain't got to worry about you guys getting unionized. I mean,
Yeah.
that's what a lot of it boils down to. And I
So,
do think
so I want to ask this, and Josh, I want to bring you in on this after I hear from Austin about what unions and everything like that. So you work for the VA, right, Austin?
I work for the government. We'll put it like that.
Okay. So
Shadow box.
are you part of the federal
Yeah.
government labor union?
I am part of the AFG. Yes.
So here's the question that I have for you. Were you like are you pro union? Were you pro union before? Like, where do you stand on that? And do you think that almost kind of symbolizes the change in the Republican Party towards organized labor?
My work phone in the back pocket, so this doesn't.
Let me hear what you say on this one, Austin.
I'm definitely pro union, like big time.
But
Like
were
that.
you before?
Yeah, I was. I mean, like I've been very pro union for several years now. Like I think that's very critical to like a functioning economy because I do think you can trace a lot of the inequality to the decline of unions. And I'm not like, listen, unions, especially back in the day, had their problems. Like there was corruption. I mean, any human enterprise is going to have corruption, but like I do think a lot of our problems are because the labor has such a weak bargaining position now. I mean, a really good example I like to point out to people is like during COVID, like, yeah, there wasn't like a huge unionization, but it's the fact that like people taking advantage of like the programs at that time that gave them a lot of power for the first time in forever. And we saw that with a lot of corporations like whining about it, where they're like, they don't want to do this or do that. And it's like, yeah, dude, for the first time ever, they actually have power over you. Like you need them more than they need you. And it's
Yeah.
like, and that was a big thing that came up with like when they were fight, there was the whole big political battle over whether or not they'd extend some of those programs. Like the thing that a lot of people brought up was like, oh, well, people don't want to work anymore, so we got to get rid of them. And then it came out like, oh yeah, just because they gave them too much power, we need them kind of. So yeah, I do think that's very critical. I do think like I'm pro for it. I do think we need more. I do think some policies like any administration is, and I'm throwing this out there in the hopes that like anybody listens and you are a politician, like do it. For one, we need to ban non-compete agreements. I think that to me it just makes it's just absolutely insane that that's even legal to like have those. I think.
You meant like the where you can't compete, like for like work and stuff, dude.
Yeah, like you'll have all these.
I have a friend that just happened to her.
Yeah,
she teaches dance, like there's a dance studio, right?
Yeah.
And the lady that she like danced for since she was 4 years old, like gives her a job. So she like her, it's weird. They do like groups, but like her groups, like they won all these awards at these competitions. And in the very next year, they started the new fiscal year. She told all the employees, she said, "Hey, we're all gonna sign a contract." Contract comes out. It was a non-compete clause. Like you could, like it was like a fight. Like you couldn't, like if you were to leave, you couldn't compete against her for 5 years. There was like a whole thing. You couldn't work for a competing company for 5. It was crazy. So I'm with you on that. I think you should get rid of them.
I mean, like,
well, so it's interesting you say that because like I kind of see it from the business side where I'm like, hey, like I see why like you should have non-compete agreements. Like now, I will say I don't think I'm working on anything crazy or anything like that, but like I think there are certain positions in a company where you should have non-competes. Like the guy who makes our catheters, like, and he kind of knows all the mixtures and the dip
Yeah.
times and all this other kind of stuff. And I'm like, yeah, like he should be under a non-compete agreement to where he cannot work for another company that can produce those catheters or do something like that, right?
I've
And I'm like, okay, like I get that, and I get like if you're an executive, where it's like, hey, like you can't do non-compete, or we're gonna have non-compete agreements. I totally get that. But I'm like, I think most of your normal engineers, some of the people in sales and marketing, maybe a little bit, I think they're okay. Like Abby was telling me about there's one that they do at the Children's Hospital, Josh, in Knoxville, and she was saying that when they work there, they have to sign a non-compete that they will not go and work at another health facility or hospital or clinic or something, pediatric
Yeah.
clinic in Knoxville if they go work at the Children's Hospital or Tenova or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you're basically saying these doctors can't go wherever they need to go to help people. And I'm like,
Yeah.
like that's so stupid.
I
Like
mean-
that's just ridiculous. Like you got to have some sort of medium of who qualifies and who doesn't qualify.
I've never had to do it on like a large business side of things. Like I haven't done it with my job, now. But like coming from campaigns, I've signed many an NDA and many times I've been on campaigns where I had to sign non-compete agreements for that year. So,
So is
I think people
AFP
sign
pro
them.
union?
I don't know. It's not one of our issues. I don't think.
So are you pro union?
I really haven't given the issue much thought. If you'd asked me a year ago, I'd have said no. I don't know. I think it's something that the Republican Party is adapting to. I think I could be for it. I just would have to I'd have to do more research. Like I really don't have a take for you here. Not something that I've typically dealt with. So I wish I had a better answer for you there. I'm sorry.
Because one of the things that I've thought about, and I think I said it on here, is, I'm surprised there aren't more salaried kind of white collar unions that people could join. Like Austin's in his, the whole federal government. But I'm like I feel like there should be like a biotech, med tech, like labor union or one for my company or whatever it may be.
I want to say there is.
And there probably is, but it's like, well, why is it that I've never heard of them? Why is it that they don't exist? Why is it like all these other kind of things?
I can tell you why you haven't heard of it, because they don't want you to know about it. I mean,
well, but like you would think that if you were the person in that union, that you'd be like, hey, I'm going to be reaching out to every person I can get a hand of or a hand on in Atlanta who work for Becton Dickinson, who work for this company, work for that company. I'm going to get a message in there, and I'm going to be banging on their doors to get it done. But I'm like, that's where it kind of goes down to like what Josh does for a living. It's like, that's on you to do that. Like, you got to go where voters are. And so it's like, if you're not coming here, then like, that's not my problem. That shows to me that maybe the union or the organization is not in a position where they can drive growth. They're just trying to hope that they can get people to come in and out.
Well, I mean, union propaganda, and I'll go knock on the next time I'm knocking doors. I'll bring in both your all's union propaganda.
Oh yeah.
Well, I mean, to give a personal example, like I used to work for Walmart before, a few years ago, and it's like there was cases where they would just shut down entire stores if somebody from the union showed up. They would just instantly close it down. There was, I don't know if you guys remember this, when Starbucks was trying to get unionized, Starbucks went around and shut down like 25 stores in like a region. I mean, they do not play with that. I mean, they are very hardcore about shutting that down. So I mean,
look at some of the stuff that Amazon was doing this past Christmas.
Yeah, I mean,
they were like literally like dumping water and like trying to like sweep people's stuff away when they're unionizing outside.
Yeah, I mean, so it's not so much like, hey, like they're not trying, but it's like you make an effort and they come down on you hard, and like a lot of this stuff is blatantly illegal, but they know they can get away with it.
Well, and that's the part that pisses me off a lot about it, is because I think it's the PRO Act, and this is something to bring back to 2026, 2028. It's always a Democratic thing that's thrown out there, but like for me, I'm just kind of like, okay, like there's like 3 or 4 provisions. One of them is like no closed door meetings or whatever it is, where it's like management talks to the people in who work there about how bad a union is, and like they block out the other union representatives from getting there. I'm like, okay, like, yeah, like we shouldn't do that. And like, oh, okay, you can't do some of these like hardball tactics, and you can't fire people or whatever for striking or unionizing, whatever. And it's like, okay, like those three things, like I feel like we could, if Democrats legitimately cared about the issue, they could push that and it would get passed. Because I feel like the outcomes if you do not vote for that are like tremendous. Like I think like a lot of people are like, wait, what do you mean? Like we can't do that? Like what do you mean? Like we have the right to unionize or organize. It's like why can't we do that? And I think it would piss a lot of people off. But it's just like put it down and make it an issue, and then like let it happen. Like I think the appetite for it is there, but they just don't want to do it.
It's because they got a lot
It almost seems like there's no incentive to do it.
well, there's a lot of the same interests, shall we say, that push them not to do it. I mean, again, like some of our problems just go back to like this. Our political system is really corrupt. I mean, there's really no other word I can think about. Like, okay, to make an example, kind of in this vein, like you know how everybody like we make the point like we can't build stuff in America anymore. Like like California takes like 20 fucking years to get a high speed rail, and they've only managed to build a damn bridge so far.
Mm-hmm.
And then like so originally the company that hired to do that back in like 2008 was like a French company. So they came there, they were there for like 3 years, and finally they just threw up their hands and said, "We're done. Like California is impossible to do business in." And they went to like Morocco in Africa, got that built on time, on budget within a few years. California still hasn't got it done. And like people make that point like, "Oh, that's just this or that." It's like no, like I saw like it was like I think it was like an Eastern European made this point to me. It sounded like a Serbian name. That's why I'm not really sure if they were or not. But anyway, they were like, a lot of you Americans, like, you guys think this is just like you can't build stuff anymore. It's just like a mindset thing. It's like, no, I mean, like anywhere else in the world, we would just call this what it is. It's corruption. Like you have to pay so much in kickbacks to get anything done, and like that's why all your projects are so far behind and stuff. It's like, and it kind of that's stuck with me for a while now because it's like, yeah, when you stop and think about it, like a lot of this stuff, it makes sense when you like. I think we're just so used to viewing ourselves as kind of outside that framework that we forget we're human too. And then like, we dress up in all this nice language or whatever, but it's like at the end of the day, it's just basic corruption. And then extend that into politics, like, money. Money does talk in politics. I mean, like I'm sure Josh has seen that in campaigns. I know me and you, I've talked about it before too. It's just like some of these interests can just throw money in, behind the scenes in Washington, and then kill this or that. And I think it just goes back to our political culture. It's really just kind of I don't know. It's stale, I guess would be the word I'd use. I mean, it's corrupt, it's stale, it's kind of stagnant, and I feel like a lot of what we're seeing. I mean, I think Trump, he's obviously not the solution, but I think he's a symptom of it, to where it's just like you people are willing to elect just about anybody to get relief. Like we've really reached the point where like like it's just people are frustrated. Like the system is not working.
So let's bring it to 2028. JD Vance is running for the Republican at the top of the ticket. Does he have your vote? And what do you think is the biggest challenge that he will have with enacting some of the policies that you had mentioned? I imagine you guys probably have similar views. So what do you think on those two? Awesome.
No, I'm not at this point. I'm just like the way I view stuff is just like I don't want to say voting is pointless because I don't want to black pill people in that sense if everybody gets that reference, but like I'm just at this point I'm not convinced you're going to have meaningful change, and given what I've seen so far, I don't really have any high expectations for this term, and I don't really have any high expectations for him personally. Now, does that mean like I'd go out and vote for a Democrat? Well, no, because like I said, like there's so many like other issues that like I just cannot vote. But like I do think we are. I've made this point to you like before. Like I think we are reaching a point where stuff is going to come to a head, and like if it's not in the ballot box next time, it could be potentially worse later on. And it's like something's got to give at some point.
What do you think, Josh?
Um, yeah, I mean, he's got my vote. I personally don't think it's going to be any contest on the Republican side, as long as he doesn't do like a Mike Pence thing, like we said earlier. I mean, I like the guy.
What do you think is going to be his biggest challenge?
Let me see here. Biggest challenge will probably be in like winning or getting the nomination.
I guess I'm winning.
Whoever they put up against him on the Democrat side, I guess, would be the biggest challenge. I don't. There's not. I mean, maybe some policy hoops you got to jump through. You know, navigate that, but I don't know.
I think for me, like I think maybe I could throw a vote out there. I think the thing that for me is really going to be where does he land? You know, like he was at one place and then he went over here to this kind of hard Trump, and then if depending on which way he kind of goes, you know, does he kind of come back to baseline? Does he kind of go more radical? You know, which policy positions is he going to take? For me, like that's going to decide whether or not I'll pick him up. Because I don't hate the guy. I think he's capable. But I mean, a challenge that I see is it's like, you know, like that's also one reason why I'm like I shouldn't vote for you because like you don't kind of have an idea of what you want to do, or maybe you have an idea of what you want to do, but you're not very good at being number two, and so that's why you kind of look all chameleon, maybe. But I don't know. I mean, I think the fact that some of the economic stuff he's willing to talk about, I think, does kind of address some of the core issues, which I like to see. I just think it's just very hard to kind of maybe back to what Austin's saying is to really trust or to believe that any of these things are actually going to happen, right? And I almost kind of don't know what it's going to take to get it to that head, right? Like COVID was supposed to do it and it didn't do it. 0809 was supposed to do that, didn't really do that, you know. And it's kind of like what's it really going to take to kind of get us to be like, all right, like we're doing this shit, you know. And I mean, I hate to say war would be something like that, and you got to do a draft, but I'm just like, you know, why not? Why couldn't it be? You know, like what event do you think it would take to kind of get people to kind of come together on this stuff, Josh?
Like you're talking
You think
like
like another pandemic would kind of do it, or like a more deadly pandemic, or do you think it's
I
something?
mean, I feel like if you try another pandemic, dude, I feel like the American people had their fill of that one. I mean, that might do it. I don't know. I think a revolution would be more in order, in my opinion.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, if it were to come to it, I think that would be. He wanted to fix everything. It would just require, civil war, revolution, something like that.
What do you think, Austin?
Let me preface this by saying I'm not endorsing anything or anything of that sort. I'm just making an observation because I do got to protect myself in that regard. But
Wow.
like, I'm a little. I got to worry about the hatch.
Hey, Austin, please speak closer into the microphone, please. We can't really hear you.
Going up real quick.
But I just got to be careful about the hatch act. But anyway, like, just. It's like I said earlier, the fact that people were celebrating a CEO getting gunned down the street should kind of be a wake up call. And the fact you're seeing all sorts of lone wolf attacks, you're seeing there's other signs too I can point to. I think it's literally going to come down to some sort of organized violence, whether it be a revolution like Josh says, or it could be just like, a repeat of something like the 70s or something where you're just constantly having political assassinations or attempts and you're getting pipe bombs going off on the street and stuff all the time. Like, I mean, that guy they busted in Idaho today for putting bombs on the railway. Like, I think you're going to start seeing more and more of that until something gives. I think eventually that's going to be the thing. There was a really good series a few years ago. It was a podcast series. It was like It Could Happen Here, and the guy was like super left wing, but he did try to do like a good job of like conceiving of it from all sides, and he was kind of like talking about like, and it was kind of prescient in a way too, because his whole thing was like, I think there is a possibility like a civil war could happen here, and I think everything we've seen since that time kind of does validate it. I do think a lot of the classical signs that you see in other countries or you've seen historically here before our first civil war are repeating themselves, and like. Heaven forbid. I mean, I would prefer that not to happen, but I do think that is a very likely very high possibility at this point. And I do think if the system, it didn't reform after. It's like you said, it didn't reform after 2008. It really, there was some attempts during COVID to reform. Those kind of got crushed. It's like I said earlier. Eventually, you're going to reach a point. If it's not in the ballot box, it will be other methods. And like, I think that's just what it's going to come down to at this point. I feel like the existing, structure is just not willing to, doing a new deal consensus where it's like, okay, last time we gave you guys Social Security and this and that. Well, this time we'll give you universal health care and we'll give you this and we'll make, we'll reduce income inequality and stuff like this. And it's like, you can only beat a dog so many times before it bites back, and I think that's really what this is kind of heading towards.
So let me give you the other case, because I disagree with both of you. I believe that we did see some stuff during COVID, and around that time that to me does kind of give me a little bit of hope, in that I think we hopefully hit a trough. Not a waypoint, Like I think we hit rock bottom, and I think we're on our way up. I think in 2020, I think it said something when you had Donald Trump and Joe Biden dumping money, just being like, we gotta give money to people. I think that's something that we did not see in 07, 08, 09. And it makes me think that I think we're starting to build up an appetite for some of those progressive changes. And I think that we're starting to see that a little bit. And so I'm thinking okay, maybe not Taiwan, but let's say there was another maybe not an pandemic, but maybe it was something else. I could totally see people being like, okay, we're gonna have to do this, 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 and this, because we're now we've got to do this. And I can start seeing a little bit some people trying to change things. I think about Josh Hawley and some of these other people. They're like, hey, we need to change some of this stuff that's going on. And you're starting to see, I think, a lot more Republicans and a lot more Democrats getting on that, to where I think there's maybe this potential. Now, I want to end with, what do you think the odds are that a Democrat will win in 2028?
Let
Josh, you got 0. You don't think a Democrat will win in 2028 under any circumstances, regardless of who it is?
We got 12 years of Republicans, boys. Have at that what you will.
What about trifecta?
With House and everything, I mean, yeah, you might see the change there. I'm talking specifically White House. No, you won't see you will not see Democrat for 12 years. At least my opinion. That's my opinion. I could be wrong, but I don't think we'll see another president that's a Democrat for 12 years.
And you're going to give them a 0% chance of winning in 2028.
So you're set. Let's see, 24 would be. See, we're in 24. Yeah, 0% chance 28. And then you're sitting for 8. And then you're sitting for 8 on whoever or not would be a Vance or something. As far as trifecta goes, I think we'll have the Senate the whole way. The House is suspect, but other than that,
what do you think, Austin?
I want to say we're due for a recession, so I do think that's a potential headwind. I do think, I know you'll disagree with me on this, but I do think our fiscal situation has kind of reached a point where there's going to be some very tough choices made in the next few years, and I don't.
Wait, did you say I disagree or I agree?
Well, I think in the past I brought it up, I've talked about our fiscal situation. You've kind of, I don't know if you necessarily agree with me on that, but
I mean, I don't think it's good, but I think it's okay. What do you want to cut?
Well, I mean, I agree.
How do you want to cut it?
And that's my point, because it's you go look it up right now, so mandatory spending, so Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, We'll include military spending in that because that's sort of it's not mandatory, but sort of mandatory. And then you include interest or no, actually don't even include military spending, just like mandatory spending, and then interest. So like the interest we got to pay on the existing debt, that's 103% of the budget. So even if you cut like all the military budget, cut everything else, you're still in the hole like 100. Like you're still running a deficit of 3%. And it's like that doesn't sound like a lot, but then you go and like look at the math, and it's like, oh, in 1990, the Soviets were running a deficit of GDP of like 10%. And then 2 years later, that nation doesn't exist. I'm not saying it's going to be just a Raptor in our case, but I do think I just, there's so many headwinds hitting us right now. And I think that was a big reason Trump wanted to get the debt ceiling taken out because he was hoping to kick that can down the road just a little bit further. Like there's so much coming to a head right now. I can't make any predictions on that regard because I mean,
And so
I-
and so I'm and I guess the official progressive conservative policy is I think you got to go back to how Obama tried to handle it in 2010 and 2012. Okay? We're willing to make spending cuts, and I say we as if I'm advocating these policies and shit. But it's like we want spending cuts and it's like okay, then we want revenue increases. And so it's like okay, where are we getting those two numbers from? Like I'm all for
Exactly.
doing it, but it's like I don't think we're at a point where I think we're getting to a point where we either need to dramatically change how we operate these programs in that Inflation Reduction Act and all those kind of things. And it's like we're either going to dramatically change how these programs work and kind of start cutting off some of these subsidies, or you're going to just
well,
have to not fund them. And so if you don't want to fund Medicare, okay, we're not going to fund Medicare anymore. And it's like that's just not going to work. And I feel like
they will come for your head if you attempt to cut Medicare.
But and that's why I'm just kind of like, okay, so like then with Republicans, it's like
There's
you need to
nothing
be
to
sitting
cut.
here saying, okay, like, hey, we can't get rid of Medicare, but we're going to change the drug pricing of Medicare. We want that to happen so we can reduce the amount of money, but we're still giving people what they want or what they have. But it's like Republicans are like, oh no, 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 we don't want to do that. And so like that's why I've always kind of been like, hey, like we'll do spending decreases, but you got to have revenue increases. And I think it was Boehner was like, "Hey, we'll come up with $400 billion of credits if Obama comes with like $800,000 or $800 billion worth of spending decreases." And like they came together on this, and I'm like, I don't think Republicans are willing to still are not willing to come anywhere on revenue increases to talk about the fiscal stability.
Well, then too, the other point I want to make is like because I think I'm not like oh we got to cut all this and that. I mean I'm very like I said I'm very left wing on economics, but I'm also a realist to know where we're at. Like okay, say you want to cut spending, like I brought this statistic up before. So currently, what the federal government spends in a year is about 25% of GDP, and that in that regards, it's like okay, so you're 25% of your GDP growth this year. That was because the federal government was spending this. So let's say you go cut like the federal budget by like mm, let's say you cut it by like a fourth. So that's like what, like 7-8% of GDP. That's a 2000. That's like 2008 recessions. So I mean,
Yeah.
like, yeah, you can make cuts, but that's going to absolutely devastate the economy too.
But then
Now,
then it makes the question of like, why don't you just try to make American companies and people here in the United States more productive and being able to compete more?
and
Like I
I
feel
agree
like
with
that's also the conversation we don't want to talk about. And I think you see some companies that will try to make an effort, be like, hey, we want to have some of these training programs, everything like that, so we can get better skilled people. But I think a lot of it is like,
it goes back.
oh, like okay, well, what's one way to do it? Okay, well, people don't miss sick days and children's sick days, and they've got health care and all this other kind of stuff, and it's like, oh, like
It goes back.
oh, like that's not good. Like we don't want to spend any money on these things.
It goes back to what I said earlier. Like it's so short term thinking now. Like 50, 60 years ago, a company would be like, okay, dude, we'll hire you straight out of high school, we'll give you an apprenticeship, we'll train you up. And now it's like, oh, we can't do that. We gotta have a good quarterly earnings or whatever. Like it's just there's so many things that are playing off each other at this point. Like there's so much like short term thinking, but it's also just like we've short term we've done so much of it at this point. We've kind of backed ourselves into a corner because it's like I said, like yeah, you can make spending cuts, but you'll trigger a recession doing it because it's like it's. I did. I've told you before in private. I have a lot of concerns about the future. I really don't know where like things are going. And I think that's and I think this is a good example of it because it's like, okay, yeah, we could do revenue increases, like me and you have talked about some of the ways we could do that before, but then it's also like, like the only real, like kind of the only thing we've really talked about that we kind of think would make it even sort of meaningful difference would be like, okay, if we instituted a VAT tax, which, yeah, that would do great, but it's also like, think about who all that would hurt. I mean, you can make it as progressive as possible, but still, it's like, like I know CBO has looked at proposals before that would like exclude like food and clothing, so that would kind of make it as progressive as possible.
Yep.
And there's also the I don't know if I've ever talked about it to you. I'll have to send you something on the X tax proposal, but it kind of functions almost like an income tax in reverse in a way. So it's like, I don't know. I mean, but it's like we're reaching the point you can't keep spending like we had, but we're also reaching the point that if we cut it, that would hurt just as much, if not worse. So it's like, I don't know. I mean, as far as 2028, that's something. I mean, it's like I said, like I think that's the whole reason he wanted to kick the debt ceiling can down the road, was because he realizes that bill's coming due. I mean, what is it now? They're saying on the Social Security fund, like it's going to be depleted by like 2034 or whatever, or 2033.
Yeah, something like that.
And it's like, dude, in our lifetime, that went from being like, oh, that might be in the 2040s. Oh, now it might be in 2032. And now there's like some talk of like, oh, if we did this or that, it might be like 2029. It's like, there's just so many things coming down the pike. I just don't know.
So let me end it with this. I'm gonna give Democrats 30 to 40% chance that they'll win in 2028. I think it's going to depend on what fuck ups Trump has and where they're at. And honestly, I think it's going to be like, how do they handle 2026? If they can get their feet together where they can come out and win some seats and do a lot and really kind of capitalize and not be kind of given too much and like actually show they put in the work, I think they could really make a play in 2028 regardless of who was running. But I think that they got to put in the work and they're not willing to do that. And I think that a 30-40% chance is reasonable. I don't think they'll lose 45. I think they'll get 45% of the vote regardless. And then I think that, or I think they get 45. Realistically, they'll probably get 48. But I think depending on who the candidate is, I think they could, and what happens and how bad Trump messes up, I think they could go all the way up to maybe kind of like a Joe Biden 2020 level kind of win. So that's where we'll leave it. So we'll do the next episode, and I've been wanting to do this, and I kind of want to be clickbaity here. The legacy of Jimmy Carter, because I've got some strong opinions on that, especially now that I live in Atlanta and I went to his presidential library. It was like there wasn't much there. So
the man,
the next episode we'll talk about that. Go ahead, Austin.
There either.
I said the man, the myth, the peanut.
Yeah. All right. So Josh, we'll end it here, and we'll be done.